I'm not exactly sure why people in general are like that. I'm not exactly certain about it. It's a little disturbing, and I don't mean when I say this because people often associate this word with that. I don't mean why are people stupid or why are people dumb, even though, you know, it's something that I often think to myself, and sometimes I say out loud I shouldn't. But my real concern is I don't really understand why people are so in general intellectually lazy. And what I mean by that is this. First, I'll explain it in the way that it manifests, which is so many people are going around in the world faking being something that they're not. Not so just in, for example, keeping things private. It's not what I mean. Let's look at, for example, something that many people can relate to, because so many people are in this courtship process. People are out there looking for a mate, if you will. And people are trying to hook up and all this other stuff like that. And the whole dating and relationship world has gotten really crazy and out of control in a lot of ways. But the one way that it has always clearly manifested to me, and that I don't understand this intellectual laziness, is how when I'll say from this perspective, because I'm male, right? I'm a man, and guys will talk to women and they will make up all kinds of stuff. I'm this, I'm that, whatever, in order to get the date or to impress the woman, right? And the intellectually lazy part is that someone could actually be genuinely interesting if they actually have interests. I remember I worked at this gym the first time I heard that idea, that sentiment, and I worked at a gym, it's no longer around, called Bodies in Motion in Encino, California. And there was this young lady there who was an actress, or an aspiring actress. Her father actually did some voiceover work for the Transformers and G.I. Joe cartoons. And it was her birthday, I remember, and I had these original scripts from being on the sets of various different movies and stuff that I had worked on. And I thought it would be nice to give her these like original, scripts from on the set, the sides and everything like that. So I put them in a nice little bag and I gave it to her, and she was grateful for it. And she was talking to me as I was at the front desk of the gym, and I said, Ashley, you're really interesting. And she looked me right in the face and said, well, interested is interesting. I said, I thought to myself, that's fascinating. Interested is interesting, because she was, I don't know, I don't know if she was asking questions about me or why I told her that she was very interesting, but she said interested is interesting. And that is, in so many ways, I understand from myself to be true, back to this idea of people faking who and what they are, or really it's what they're about, because I don't want to make this about the things that people think that dating should be about, and what you see on a lot of social media with, for example, women out there saying, trying to get what people have said are like the top 1% of the 1%. Somebody who's making $500,000 a year is 6 feet tall, and I forget what the other criteria are. But those are the main things you'll hear, and it has nothing to do with the person's character. It just has to do with superficial things. One, something that a person can't help, which is their height, and another thing that is if we look at the social structure of the world, is unattainable for many people. Not, at least, and I say for many people, just in the same way that I'm talking about why people are intellectually lazy, because I really feel that people can achieve a higher state of financial material wealth. It's just that most people aren't ambitious enough to do so. A lot of people aren't even attempting. A lot of people give up at a certain point, and that's another part of the intellectual laziness. But to complete this idea that I'm speaking of, specifically in the relationship arena, and this has nothing to do with whether this makes a person necessarily interesting or not, because it's all in the way you present yourself as well, is just a lot of people really aren't about anything. And it's weird to me. And I get that I cannot necessarily expect the world to operate as I do, but it does color the lenses that I view the world in, because when I look at it, I just think to myself, that is so strange. The questions I ask are, why would you not want to understand something fundamental a little bit more, at least the basics of it? Why would you not want to have this basic knowledge of, this subject, just the real basics? And an interesting example of how we all know that most people in the world who maybe even are somewhat educated usually expect, I think, everyone else to be stupid for the most part, is when we look at certain kinds of ambush reality TV and some kind of ambush journalism. I don't know what exactly would be called, but I think the word ambush is appropriate here. And one day I was walking down a street in Los Angeles. It was actually Hollywood Boulevard, and I was somewhere in front of the Grumman Chinese Theater. It was during the day, and this young brown-skinned lady approached me. I think she had like either braids or dreads in her hair, and she had a small camera crew. I think it was just a camera guy and maybe a sound guy with her. And she walked up to me and said, "Hey, do you mind if, I do a quick interview on camera and ask you a couple questions? It's going to be on such and such a show." I don't actually remember what the show was, and I'm pretty sure it didn't air because she didn't get the results that she wanted to. And I know she didn't because she insulted me afterwards and tried to get, maybe something for the camera, because maybe they were having just a bad day of maybe there were just too many people who knew a little bit of something about something walking around. But the point was that she showed me some photographs, and the one photograph she showed me was a woman, and I think I don't remember what the name was, but for some reason I knew it was either the governor of California. It was a woman at the time, and I said her name, and I remember because this guy Kevin and I were talking about her, and he's really, he pays attention to current events and certain things in politics, and we had a discussion about her, so I knew who she was. And she showed me another photo of a basketball player, and she asked me who he was, and I said, I have no clue. She's like, "You don't know who that is?" I said, "No, I don't know." And interesting enough, I really didn't, because I don't watch sports like that, but it was LeBron James. Yeah, and I know people are like, what, you didn't know who LeBron James was? No, I really didn't on sight, by looking at a photo, know who LeBron James was. And then when she said LeBron James, I was like, oh, I've heard his name, but I'm not familiar enough with him. At least I wasn't at the time. I wasn't familiar enough with him to put his name to his face. It just wasn't that interesting to me. And another one of the questions she asked me was how many feet were in a mile, and I immediately answered 5,280, which is interesting. That's when I think about that, 5,280. I think I might have mentioned this before, but 528. That's also the frequency in photons that is the color of chlorophyll in plants, and also it's known as the love frequency. I actually have this instrument that Cecilia Grace, who I met on the Wisdom app platform, which is now called Noom Vibe. I bought this thing called a love tuner, from her that plays 528 hertz. And interesting enough, also green, I know that it may not be connected, but the heart chakra is also green in the Vedic tradition, that we get yoga and prana and the chakras from. It's also green. So that's interesting that the love frequency is the heart chakra is green, and the color green is 528 photon frequency is green, and 528 hertz is known as the love frequency. That's fun. But she asked me this person asked me, how many feet were in a mile, and a couple other things that I knew, basic stuff. Like I said, just really basic, fundamental things. She might have asked me about, to name 2 or 3 states, and I did, and the capital of something, and then, I answered these questions, and I knew who the senator or governor of California was. I really don't remember who it was. I wish I did right now. But I do remember the LeBron James thing, because how many times she asked me, you don't know who that is? You don't know who that is? And it was funny. And then she got upset and kind of just told the guy to stop the camera. She's like, well, your breath stinks. And maybe my breath did stink, but it just was really funny that, because her expectation, and I know people think this is so cliche to bring race into this, but she was a young black woman. I'm a brown-skinned man as well, and maybe the expectation is that I wouldn't know how many feet are in a mile, and I should know who LeBron James is, and I don't know who this white lady is. I shouldn't know who this white lady is, who's the this head of state in California, and I shouldn't know what these different states are, these capitals are, and things like that, and it upset her, and that she had to insult me, I guess, to get something for the camera. I don't know if it was ever used, because they walked away, and I even asked, and she never told me what the outlet they were filming for. But all that to say again about, I don't get this idea of just not wanting to understand basic information. People are just running around and we're like just a bunch of dummies for no good reason, especially now with how accessible information is. And I recall years ago I had done a podcast recording, an audio recording, with the title of something asking a question, why blame social media? And the premise simply was based off of how many complaints people were lobbying and writing on social media about social media. Social media is ruining the youth, and social media is corrupting this, and it's causing that. And well, yeah, depending on what you're looking at, that's what you're gonna get. That's just in general. That's as a person who studied hypnosis and has a degree in clinical hypnosis, that it's just basically what we focus our attention on repetitively is going to shape our understanding and our belief systems and how we eventually behave in the world. And even metaphysically, on a more fundamental level of what our character, our spirit, our soul is dependent upon that which we pay our focus, our attention on. We're absorbing and becoming more like that energy. We begin to vibrate at the frequency of those things that we tune into most of the time. So yeah, social media will be corrupting. Like, for example, a big thing now is this, I'll just say the rhyming name. I'm not sure why people don't say the name of it, but I'll say lonely bands. There's so many people who are paying. I hear that people who are on that platform are making hundreds of thousands of dollars, sometimes millions of dollars a month, because guys are going on there and they're paying that. And for what? It's great, but that's what they're paying, not only their attention, but their money to. And instead of focusing on something that would actually really help them to be more interesting, they're like, and this is a good way to come back to this about why it originally concerns me sometimes in the first place is in the whole relationship world in general, just making friends and dating. You know, these people who are lonely, some people use the term simps and incels, you know, the involuntarily celibate, you know, and these people who might be awkward or and for whatever reason don't usually get dates, or women reject them for all those reasons like before, like they're not earning enough money, or they're too short, or whatever, right? Or things that guys can't help, like they're balding or they're short, you know. But which is crazy because people will look up to, like, for example, the Dwayne the Rock Johnson, who's bald, or Bruce Willis, or Jason Statham, right? I can go on, right? These people who are these kind of heartthrobs for women, but it's because they're so, I guess it's because they'll overlook that because those guys are making a whole bunch of money. But things that guys, men in general, can't help, you know, if they're genetically balding or they are shorter, right? Or, and, you know, maybe the money thing, and if you're fat, right, you can help those things. You know, you can work and save and be, you know, more responsible with your money, and you can go to the gym. But, you know, I've seen things online which I find amusing where someone would ask a woman this question: "What are you looking guy?" And they say, "All this money and you know, he's got to be tall," and they're like, "So you wouldn't date a short guy?" And then the guy busts out a scale and says, "Well, then, you know, I'm not stepping on that scale." And he says, "Well, you can change that. Like, I can't change his height," and double standard thing. And I know it's controversial, and people are, "Oh, body shaming," and all this stuff. But that's not what it's about. The thing about so these guys, the incels, or these people who are paying for the lonely bands, and the women that are on those platforms, you know, it has been demonstrated that if a person is interesting in other ways, if they have passion about something, and even the fact of knowing, having information can help with your job prospects, can help with your money. But instead of them spending their time watching hours of videos on physics or chemistry or math or science or even martial arts videos, or, man, it would be even better if they spent all their time reading comic books and watching Marvel movies and learning about that, and maybe looking for the lessons and things like that, or the interesting aspects of fantasy and science fiction that you can mine from those things that just elevate your thinking, rather than, you know, watching some person, you know, shake their goods on video. It's weird. It's weird to me that, but again, I said earlier, I of course should not expect the world to and other people to operate by my, if you will, standards. However, because of the way that I operate, it's weird to me that people don't, because it seems so basic and fundamental. It seems like such a simple thing, maybe not easy, but such a simple solution to, you know, feeling stupid and dumb and lost and without anything interesting to say to another person, because all you spend your time doing is watching people dance around naked and watch guys play with balls, which I'm not making fun of that. It's just that that's just another thing that's not interesting to me, which is why I didn't know who LeBron James was at the time. Now, I have been to sports bars with friends and to watch football and other games, and it's exciting and interesting to me, even baseball, just watching the athleticism and watching the game unfold. But I will be excited about the pitcher striking somebody out. Like, for example, if the Mets and the Yankees were playing, the Mets pitcher, if he struck out a Yankee batter, I would get excited about that, while at the same time, if that Yankee batter hit a home run, I would be excited about that. That's how I watch sports. I'm just looking at it at the pure athleticism and just the game itself. But a lot of people are very cliquey in that, you know, either you're a Mets or a Yankees fan, or you're a New York baseball fan and not a not a Baltimore fan, I don't know, or whatever, Dodgers fan, I don't get down like that. And that's why I don't necessarily know individual players. I mean, I stopped being interested in individual players when I was in elementary school, way back in the day when Don Mattingly, was playing for the Yankees. I only remember that because that was the thing at the time. The Yankees. I was in the Bronx, and it was the Yankees, right? And so that is, it still baffles me that it's not that difficult to really just be interesting by being interested. Like, actually have an interest. Find something to be interested in. And I mean, for just an example, right? I'm very interested in reading. Somehow, a long time ago when I was in school, that was one of the things that really got my mind into a nice fantasy world, was reading. And I remember, like, for example, I read a book in junior high school, or maybe it was elementary school, I don't remember. It was called The Last Mission by Harry Mazer. And around the same time, I read a book, it was a choose your own adventure book called The Lost Tribe, and it was about the Maoris in New Zealand, and just how I would just get lost for hours in these books, and to the point where I actually felt like I was there. I remember being in Nazi Germany with the protagonist of The Last Mission by Harry Mazer, and I remember being in New Zealand with the Maori, and I remember a word Pakeha, which meant white man from the book, but those things just interested me, and I was so immersed in the story that I could retell it to people. Just like I get really immersed in movies, and I not necessarily suspend my disbelief, but I really get immersed in watching things to the point where I can relate to and feel what the characters are feeling, or feel what that would be like if it were a real life scenario. And then it's just the types of things that I would discuss with people about it. A lot of people and I'm generalizing again, but there's a lot of people who would talk about, oh, did you see what Black Widow was wearing in that outfit, and why it had to be so skin tight? Meanwhile, I'd be like, did you see that choreography, those moves? Did you see that leg lock? Did you see that flying triangle choke that she applied? The athleticism that stunt person displayed, or just how they made it look so good for this little lady to be doing that, and the editing. I mean, this is amazing, the cinematography, and just how they pull that off on screen. It's just fantastic. And so there's just a different level, and it shows what people are paying attention to, that reveals. And this is an fascinating aspect of the word interesting, also because I suppose there are different levels of interest, and I also would have to assert, and just I don't know if it's right to say, to be transparent, that I'm judging the levels of interest, because whereas someone's just plainly interested in what Black Widow or Thor is wearing, I'm more interested in the dialogue and the athleticism and just the hard work he must have put in to get his body to be like that. Or, I wonder how they got that hammer Mjolnir to look the way it did, and just the effects. And I started thinking about, wow, man, these special effects people, and what it would really be like, what would the physics be like to actually have a hammer come back to you like that? Is that even possible? Or what kind of device would it be? Some powerful electromagnetic device if you wanted to simulate something like that? It just, there's just different levels of interest, and I don't know who it's attributed to, but there's some rhetoric going around about how there's different levels of communication, where the lowest level is when people sit around talking about other people, and then above that is when people talk about events, and then the highest form of communication is when people are communicating about ideas. And so I suppose I am being an elitist and a snob here because I've been talking this whole time about ideas and the idea about the question, why is it that people are so intellectually lazy? And in that, of course, I've talked about some people and some events in my life, but it's really about, and I'm going to assert this, that it's about this idea. The idea, the question that spawns me is, why are people so intellectually lazy? And the answer, part of that is, the extension of that question, or the full question would be, why are people so intellectually lazy when they don't have to be? When it's simple to not be intellectually lazy? And where does that question come from? Because so many people are feeling lonely and isolated and rejected and feel like they have nothing to talk to other people about or can't relate to other people on things, or they don't have job prospects, or they feel stupid or dumb or isolated in the world, and it's because of what you're focusing on. It's plain and simple. It's what you are interested in. You have low-level interest. If you're just interested in the shoes that people are wearing and where they got their clothes from and whether it's a name brand or not, that, I think, to me, you're lost. That is a lost soul game you're in. That is a sad world. It's a really, really sad world. Because and it's sad too, because people don't even know what they're talking about and don't even understand really truly what value and really is, or even authenticity, as I should say. I remember the same friend Kevin I was talking about earlier. Here's an event I'm talking about, but to uphold this idea, I was taking some classes at a community college, Los Angeles Valley College, and my friend Kevin and I had just worked with this woman who was running the show for this thing called LA Battlegrounds, where I met John Sally. He's a basketball player, and we were basically organizing the whole show. It was this thing called LA Battlegrounds, and I think it might have been an event that was helping doing some charity, but it was one of those street basketball game tournaments, and it was Nike Battlegrounds. And because we were representing Nike gave us this full basketball warm-up suit. So it was these pants and this long sleeve shirt that you could roll up and turn it into a little pouch, and it was like one of those sweat wicking ones. And then they gave us these old school Nike Air shoes. They were just plain white, and they had it was white on white, and it had a Nike swoosh on it. Anyway, my friend Kevin, he kept them as a collector's item. I just wore them, and I was wearing them to Valley College, and of course it was the black kids that were there that were like, oh, look at them shoes, them Airs ain't even got no air, da, 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 da. And that's the first thing that they talk about. Like, and what was I doing? I wasn't even doing anything to them. I didn't even have anything to do with them. I was just going there for classes. And what made their attention get drawn to me, that they all of a sudden had to start attacking my shoes. And it was this group of, and it was just so pathetic and so sad. And that's the thing. It's like, do you have such a low-level interest? You know, it's things like that, and spending all of your time watching porn or whatever it is that you're doing, instead of motivation and self-development and learning and education that doesn't necessarily have to be in a school, can just be from books and just doing something interesting, going to the gym, you know, having some interest, building some skill. That's really, I think, where a lot of the problems are coming from. But I still don't understand why so many of you in general are intellectually lazy when you don't have to be. It's disturbing. It's very, very disturbing. And I'm not certain why this question just kind of bubbled to the surface with me, but it may have something to do with, I'm also attempting to define and redefine what my place in this world is. What am I doing? Because now it's coming to to a point where I'm having to niche down and at least on the surface, specialize in something in order to kind of hone and refine my business and really, really take it to a different level. Whereas before, I've kind of just been getting by, having these random online journals for almost 2 decades, and I'm realizing that I have to put a spin and a title on them. And I was just looking at the definitions of journalism, because years ago on one of my subdomains for hypnoathletics.com, I had posted just different definitions of what it meant, because I wanted to start a school. I still do. I want to do online education, but I wanted to run an educational business in part, just to be an educator, to seem really fun to me. But so I had all these definitions of what a university was, what school is, and all this stuff like that. And I just recently looked at journalists, and I thought, well, I'm doing a lot of that, and I have fun playing around with this site I have called HAKEYM News, and I made this news site, and I started originally because I was reading all of these different technical news articles like neuroscience news and tech briefs media and military and aerospace news, and I thought it'd be fun to be part of World Reading Club to do that. But I was looking up journalists, and the definition was, it's a noun, and it says a person engaged in journalism, especially a writer or editor for a news medium. B, a writer who aims at a mass audience, and that really stuck out to me. And B2 was a person who keeps a journal. And I thought to myself, all three of them pertain to me, but especially definitions B and B2, a writer who aims at a mass audience and a person who keeps a journal. I've always been a writer. I've long been giving out poems and lyrics and haiku. Even the first book that I ever published was back in 2005, and it was a collection, a chapbook of haiku called Serena Wears Black. And then I published one recently after Flora Elizabeth Crosco died, when she passed away in 2019. In 2020, on her birthday, I published one called Hypnotic Wax, which was a collection of haiku that I'd been collecting from around 2013 up until 2020, when I finally put some of the last ones in it. And I had to start asking, because I have so many interests. And I have to niche down, though, at some point in time. Just getting to that point where sometimes it feels a little frustrating that, to kind of be at this one level where I feel like I've plateaued. And so that's where that question came from. Why is there such mediocrity when it's not necessary? And one of the last things I'll say is I was just really wanting to continue to emphasize that we don't have to be so boring and plain and mediocre. And I know a lot of people will actually think that I'm boring, because my life consists of practicing martial arts, playing music, reading and writing books, and traveling. And that's boring to people, because to them, for some reason, exciting is going to a bar and getting drunk and going to strip clubs and, doing all this crazy rowdy stuff that doesn't make any sense and doesn't contribute anything at all. People will argue with me about that. I experimented with those things. I tried it. It just, I couldn't serve the two masters. I couldn't serve God and Mammon, as the Bible says. And there's a saying, what's the full saying of a jack of all trades? And I looked it up. Let's see Google again. It's really great. What oh, and I'll end with that. What is the full quote, a jack of all trades? And it was, full quote, jack of all trades. Okay, I have to see. Google's not working with me. I have to type the full thing. Full. Yeah, and actually, I first heard it from. Yeah, this is it. I actually heard it from the fitness director at One Life Fitness in Virginia Beach. Really, he was a great guy to me for a lot of things. I didn't have any issues with him, but he was very complimentary and supportive of me. I guess he just seemed a little bit off to me sometimes. I wonder if he was okay. But the saying is, and this is why I'm having to kind of figure out what my main focus and point is. But it says most people just hear a jack of all trades, master of none, right? Which seems kind of derogatory to the person who's the jack of all trades. But the full quote is, jack of all trades, master of none, but oftentimes better than a master of one. That's inspiring to me. Jack of all trades, master of none, but oftentimes better than a master of one.